mark character, we can even use the square brackets characters, just as we use with file name wildcards. So I'll just give you a little simple example. Suppose that I wanted to make sure that they could enter uppercase or lowercase b for the Beatles. Then what I could do is I could simply change that to a B or a capital B, like that, just as we do with file names. And then I save that and run it, and if I enter Beatles like that, then that actually matches as well. So it will match uppercase or lowercase b in this case. So it's in fact I really could just do it like that. If it just happens to begin with the word beat, then I'm going to assume that it's the Beatles. Now that might be actually incorrect, but it's certainly a valid thing to do in a shell script. So I'll just test that. Beat, I could even put the beatniks, I suppose, and that probably is incorrect. I very much doubt there was a rock group called the Beatniks that made 12 albums, but at least it proves the feasibility of that particular option in the shell script. So that's pretty much it for the case statement. Here's just a few notes just to keep in mind while you're using it. It's actually a rather complicated piece of code, the case statement, because there's a bunch of new language elements that we haven't seen before that we have to remember and get right, including the word case, the word in, the word ESAC, the round bracket, the double semicolons, the vertical bar symbol, and all the wildcard stuff. I mean, that's all quite complex, and it's all new with the case statement. It's actually a lot less complicated to use an if statement, but it's considerably more code. If you can get the actual typing right, if you can get the syntax right, the case is a lot prettier to use. But like I said, there's a lot of memory work involved. You've got to remember all these different elements of it. So keep that in mind, and it's actually what most programmers use instead of a series of if, elif, else clauses. Second note, you might have noticed during the entire module that I've just shown you that the case statement really doesn't have anything to do with the true or false notion that we created earlier in the chapter, or the notion of exit statuses. It really just compares one variable to a series of values. Okay, keep that in mind and you're probably going to be fine with the case statement, which brings us actually to the end of this chapter on conditional code. You now know quite a variety of ways that you can cause code to be executed conditionally. Let's move on, and I'll set you some exercises to do for those constructs. Here are the exercises for Chapter 5. Firstly, we'll write a simple script that asks the user for their age, and then we'll compare that age to a variable called retirement age, which should already be set somewhere in the shell script. Now, if the age that they entered is greater, then print out a message simply telling them that they should be retired or something. Otherwise, tell them that they are still quite young. Of course, we have to correctly handle the case where the user simply presses enter and doesn't type in any age at all. Secondly, write another script that reads the name of a directory from the keyboard and then checks to see if the name that they entered is indeed a directory. Also, apart from just being a directory, it has to be writable. See if you can do this test on just one line. If it is writable and it is a directory, then the script should actually create a file in that directory called hello. It doesn't really matter what you put in the file, just so long as there is a file there called hello. And of course, again, we should make sure that we handle the case where the user simply presses enter without entering a directory name. And of course, we're going to modify the course project. I bet you can guess what we're going to put in here. Yep, we're going to present the user with a menu of choices. That was the actual original goal of doing this chapter. And we want the choices to be as follows. 4 choices: create a record, view records, search for records, and delete records that match a given pattern. Currently, of course, you'll only be able to implement the first 2 choices. That's okay, we'll just leave the other 2 blank for the moment. We'll fill them in later on in the course. Now we're going to use a case statement to do this, to determine actually what choice they made. And I'd like that to be numeric, so if they enter the number 1 on the keyboard, then you will go and do the create record code. If they enter a number 2, then you'll do view records and so on. And of course you have to make sure that you handle the case where they don't enter anything at all. or some other value that's not a number, you have to handle that correctly. As I said, with choices 3 and 4 you don't have to implement those at the moment. It might be nice if you simply output a message saying that those options are not yet implemented, or something like that. And also, of course, remember now that it is actually possible to view the file before anything has been written to it. In other words, what might happen might be the user might start the program, and before they bother to create a record, the very first time they run the program they might decide to view the records, and there obviously wouldn't be any records at that point, so you have to be able to handle that without displaying any error messages on the screen. I'll leave you to decide how you might do that. Anyway, good luck, and of course, as usual, I will be providing written solutions to all of those exercises and to the course project. Okay, here are my sample solutions to the exercises from Chapter 5. Here's the solution to the age question. I've called mine age test, and it is of course available in the Chapter 5 folder of the CD. The very first thing we do is we create a variable called retirement age, and we set it to some number. I'm going to set it to 65. Then of course we ask the user for their age, read it in. The very first thing we do is we test to see if they entered anything. Now I've done that test in a slightly different way here, just to show you that there is another way that you can do it. I've put quotes around the age and compared it to quotes around nothing at all. And of course, if age was not entered, then age would be nothing at all, so both sides of the equal sign would be the same. I assure you that works, but of course we're going to prove it in just a moment. Then if they made it past that okay, then we say if $age, and we don't have to put quotes around it now because we know that it's not going to be empty, and we can say if that is greater than retirement age, then echo you should be retired, otherwise you are still quite young. Okay, so let's run that, and please enter your age. Now I'll skip it and press enter, and I get the message, of course, you did not enter an age, which is good. So now I will enter an age, which is say 23, and you are still quite young. Fabulous. And try again. This time I'll enter the age of 100, and I guess I should be retired at age 100, but you never know these days. Okay, so that script seems to be working. We'll now look at the directory script, and this is actually quite similar. We enter a directory name, we test to see in the same way whether it was entered, and specify that they did not enter a directory, and then, and I ask for it to happen on the one line. Here we are doing two tests on the one line. We're saying that the directory name dname entered is a directory and it is writable, and if it is that case, then I'll just put the words well done into a file called hello in that directory name. Otherwise, of course, I'll friendly put out a message saying dname is not a writable directory, so nothing written. Now I didn't ask you to do that, but of course it's not a bad thing to do just in case. And let's test if that is working. And nope, that's the wrong one. Okay, try again. Please enter a directory name. Now I'll skip that. You did not enter a directory. Good. Try again. Please enter a directory name. How about / etc. And it's not a writable directory, nothing written. Okay. Try again. This time maybe a file. How about the file ~/.profile? And that's not a writable directory, I guess. That is correct. And I'll just try it again with how about the directory name .. which is the parent directory of this, and it must have worked because I didn't get anything echoed out to the screen. So theoretically there should be now a file in the .. directory called hello. Let's go and see if there is. cd .. and vi hello, and there it is. Well done. Okay, good. Let's now examine the working course project. Okay, now I've made a few changes to this. The guts of the program are essentially the same, but I've made a few architectural changes. A simple change at the beginning here. I've said that I'm going to test to see if the file, the names.dat file, actually exists already, and if it doesn't, then I create it. So if I say if the file does not exist, then, well, you can think of that as being a then, but it's really if that succeeds, then proceed to this bit. And a greater than sign at the beginning of a command simply creates a file with nothing in it. I'm not sure if you were aware of that, but it does. You can test that by yourself if you like. Greater than as the beginning of a command line is a valid command. And then we simply display the menu. And I'm using some \n's and \t's to make the output look a little neater, which you can choose to do if you want to, but it doesn't really matter. And then prompt the user for an answer. And read the answer into a variable called ANS, ANS, and if they typed a space after their first answer, then anything else they typed will get read into junk, another variable called junk, which I'll never look at again. And then I do my case statement. Notice that I put double quotes around ANS, which obviously will test for the case where they didn't enter anything at all. Now if they entered a number 1, then we read in all the contact details, and this is exactly as before. I didn't change a single line of that code, but I did put the 2 double semicolons at the end there. Now if it's case number 2, then show what's currently in the file. Now the file will be there, because if it wasn't there when the program started it, then I will have created it, courtesy of that little test at the beginning of the file. And then this is all the same code as well, and this is all the same code with the little double semicolon at the end. And cases 3 and 4, I simply say that that's not implemented yet, and if they entered anything else but 1, 2, 3 and 4, and I say that was an invalid choice. Notice that I put a little that's a single character there. It's not a caret, an up hat symbol followed by a capital G. It's actually a Control G, and Control G, as you may or may not be aware, is the bell character, so that will actually put out a little ping to alert them to the fact that they've made an invalid choice. And that's it. That's the end of the case statement, and it's also the end of the program. So let's see what that looks like when that runs. Okay, so we'll run this, and so there's my main menu now. Notice that I had done a clear at the beginning of the displaying of the menu, which causes the screen to be cleared before the menu is displayed, which kind of, I guess, just makes it look a little neater. And then the first thing I can do, I guess, is view the records. Now this should not produce any error messages because I will have created the file. So answer number 2 is there are 0 contacts in the database, which is correct, but there was no error message, which is also correct. And I'll answer now. Well, I won't type anything at all. I'll just press enter, and that was an invalid choice. Now you probably didn't hear the little ding, but I did. And again, how about an answer of 6, which again is an invalid choice with a little ding. And now we'll try to create a record. And it really doesn't matter what I type in here. Okay, so now the program exits, but when I run the program again, I can view the records, and there is 1 contact in the database, and there it is, that rubbish that I just typed. So it seems to be working. Well, I guess I should check whether 3 and or 4 are working as well. So let's just check 3, and the search case is not implemented yet. Okay, good. As I said, this code will be available on the CD for you to check against yours, and if you've done it very differently to that, that's okay, just so long as it matched the specification.